What is going on, my YouTube friends, my Patreon friends? How are we all doing today? Listen, our channel friend, one of my moderators, one of my personal friends, Elizabeth, introduced me to another reactor called Tim Welch Vocal Studio. And Tim is great, man. He seems like a very kind guy. He's very, very, very knowledgeable when it comes to his craft and his lane and everything. And I saw that he did a video. I think it's commenting. I haven't watched it yet. We're gonna watch it together. I don't think it's so much reacting to. I think it's more so like topping up on a video from Phil from Wings of Pegasus, and they're talking about autotune in the industry and like pitch correction, voice correction in the industry. And I have those of y'all that don't know, I've been a live sound guy for majority of my life now. Like I've been in live audio for like 17 years. The last couple of years doing the YouTube thing, I've also been like doing mixing projects when it comes to like digital mixing and stuff. And I happen to have a lot of thoughts on this as well. And a lot of personal experience, man, like with either bands that I've worked with live and also having to correct things and change things and make them feel unique and authentic still in their own way in the studio, right? So I'm gonna pull this video up. I'm gonna watch this. This is Tim Welch's video. I'm gonna have the link to both videos in the description box, y'all. If you're not already a viewer of Tim, go watch his channel, man. He's got some great breakdowns. He's got some really, really, really interesting thoughts and like a lot of really good videos, man. His channel is great. And I'm sure y'all know who Phil is from Wings of Pegasus. Dude is a legend, man. Okay, let's check this out. I haven't watched this video yet.
All right, I think this is super important, and I want to listen to this with you all together.
Let me explain it. The music industry have been trying to get pitch correction as an industry standard for 20 years. Why? Because it means that their singers, who might not be very accurate pitch-wise, can use pitch correction, and great singers who would far outshine some of their artists, if they're using pitch correction as well, it's now a level playing field. The great singers who have all of the emotion, all of the expression, are now going through pitch correction, and now they're the same as the vocalists who don't have the expression and the emotion. They're all at the same level. So for the recording industry, for the music industry as a whole, that's the perfect game plan. It's the perfect business model. If you can make a singer who isn't as talented sound the same as a singer who's massively more talented, that's the ultimate.
Okay, got that? Makes sense?
That's the truth, though, right? Because you can find someone who's charismatic in the way that you want, or maybe like the salesperson that you want, like good in front of the cameras, lively in front of the cameras, going to do a bunch of cameos, all that stuff, has the personality you want. You can turn them into a competitor against the best vocalists out there, right? Sort of gives me the same vibes as what's happened in bodybuilding over the last, I couldn't even tell you how many years, but like they stopped testing because it was basically, it became a competition of who can beat the tests the best, right? Who can do the most amount of like bodybuilding narcotics and not get caught in the test. So once they removed all the guidelines, then it was quote unquote a fair playing field. And it feels like we're moving that way with the music industry too, right? And that's really tough. That's really tough, man. And like, you know, a lot of these people who like would bathe in the rivers, pour their whole life and soul, sell their house to be like a musician, they're not always the ones who want to be out in front of huge crowds. Like they want to play for their like smaller, more intimate buildings where people actually appreciate what's happening, not just like buying a ticket as like a social status thing, right? So anyways, let's see what Tim has to say here.
Why I'm bringing... Okay, got that? Makes sense? This is why I'm bringing this up more and more on the channel. When I first started reacting not too long ago, I'm only 5 months in, I was a little insecure about talking about how much vocal effects processing I'm hearing on these vocals. Like, in other words, how much people are, after they've recorded their vocals, manipulating it with pitch correcting software, tone quality changing software. This is why it's so important. It's because this is like big business stuff. This is like controlling the music business, like taking great singers, auto-tuning them, taking not so great singers, auto-tuning and pitch correcting and getting them all in the same playing field so that the business can control who gets the front stage based on whatever the trends are. It's just an easy sort of solution. And if the populace, if you all can't hear it, what's it matter? And this is why I'm going to talk about it more on the channel when I hear it. This is why I'm going to demonstrate with...
It's a brave thing, man. It's a brave thing because like without And I'm on his side of this. I know how tricky that is to navigate, especially when, like, say, for example, let's just paint a picture here. Maybe you sent me $5-10 to react to your favorite performance ever. And I go, oh, they're correcting the vocal. Well, maybe you've heard on podcasts, maybe you've heard the artists say it themselves. No, they don't do that. No, they don't like that. No, they don't like mess around with any of that stuff. But that doesn't mean that sometimes like the network gets in the way or the big industry gets in the way, right? And really, when it comes to like autotune, quote unquote, there's a lot of different levels to it, right? So let me just put Tim to the side here for a second. So like in North America specifically, there's this kind of rule of thumb that you always use when you're recording. You always use like 15% of like actual autotune. There's pitch correction, there's autotune. And all that really does, it doesn't really influence the vocal initially, but at the end of your phrases, when like 90% of singers start to fall a little bit flat, either from like losing breath, a little bit of support in their like actual diaphragm, or maybe just the end of like a tailing note and vibrato, they'll start to fall just like a little bit flat. And that 15% of that autotune will just pick it back up and it just keeps it kind of like where it is, right? And that's one form of it. But like we've become so dependent on that we'll actually just, instead of back in the day when you would inform someone, you would ask them like, hey, is it okay if I just put a little bit of autotune on this just to like clean up the ends of the phrases? Yeah, sure. Or no, don't bother. We'll just keep, because here's the thing, I'm gonna get ahead of myself. In a perfect world, you would keep shooting the vocal until you get the take that you want. But if it's the label's money, if it's someone else's money, these loans that, we hear about happening all the time, horrendous loans, it's more of a like, how do we get this done to the best that it can be in the fastest amount of time, right? Realistically, because it's still a process. But like the whole doing it in post thing, man, like that sucks. Like that really, really, really sucks, right? And so in comes 15% autotune. And then what happens when it's 17%? And then it's 20%. And then it's 25%. Like at what point is it no longer like, hey, like maybe we should just get a better performance? And at the end of the day, like art should be the performance. If you go back and you look at a lot of music, like I can, off the top of my head, Paramore's Riot record, one of my favorite records when it comes to references, mixes. It's like what got me into pro audio, one of the like early onsets for me. Just hearing that record and wanting to create that sound or those sounds desperately again. Like there's missed notes all over that record, y'all. Like there's notes outside of the key signatures, and like it just adds like a human element to it, right? We get that in drumming too. Like a perfectly quantized drum kit just feels weird. You may as well have used a drum machine. Like there's a heartbeat playing that drum kit, and you may as well let them shine, man. And I'm not saying like if you swing for like on the downbeat and you've got like a big snare drum crack and you end up on like behind the beat too much that it's noticeable, then redo the take. But I'm not saying it has to be so perfect to the grid that it's like a fucking robot. You know what I mean? Anyways, there's my tangent for the day. I jumped around on a bunch of things, but let's go back to Tim here.
This is why I'm going to talk about it more on the channel when I hear it.
All the power to you.
I'm going to demonstrate with software when I hear it. The same way that Phil does. I have some of the similar softwares that he has when he's breaking down if someone is doing the pitch correcting stuff or not. So I'm going to start working that in here and there into my videos so that I can talk about it, because this channel is for entertainment, but it's also for education. And I believe it's very important moving into the future that we celebrate real, live, raw vocals, and we celebrate artists who can do it live.
I would rather hear a few botched notes, like as long as like we all have a tolerance, right? If you listen to a singer that's singing like flat the whole time, like you're only going to tolerate so much of that. You're probably going to click on something else, right? But a note here or there, bro, like that's just human. That's just how it goes, man. Like not everyone is perfect all the friggin' time. And sometimes like emotion takes over. I talk about ratios, right? I talk about like pitch, like focusing on pitch and tone and balancing that with emotion. And if the emotion takes over, good luck getting consistent tone and pitch out. Like if you have tears coming out of your eyes, how are you supposed to be as focused on having good quality tone and a solid perfect pitch the whole time? And there are singers who can sing perfectly in pitch, maybe majority of the time, or like notes here and there, this and that. But I would much, much, much rather hear like a human voice, a real authentic raw human voice, maybe miss a note or two here and there, versus a perfect performance every single time. Like every single time. It's robotic, y'all.
Like Billie Eilish, for instance. If you go to Phil's channel, there's a video where he's breaking down how Billie Eilish, straight up, she does live what she does on her recordings. And That's amazing. And there are lots of artists who are very big in the scene who can't do that, who don't do that. So that's what I want to celebrate. That's what this channel is about. It's about celebrate. I'm a vocal instructor. I've been teaching people how to build singing technique for the last 24 years. And admittedly, I have used the pitch correcting software in the past. I've used it on my own vocals. I've used it on my student vocals. Right when it all came out, I was very excited about it. Like, oh my God, I can do all this stuff.
It's neat.
But where my mind always went was, uh-oh, what's going to happen when my student or I need to sing the song live? I better get it together so that I can sing it live. So it's really interesting that that's the thing that's come up, and it all comes full circle. We just can't lie to each other about this anymore. We have to honor it. We have to practice like they did back in the day and get our vocals to a level to where we take a mic, we turn on a little reverb, a little compression, the normal things that we put on a vocal, and then we sing it, and we take that vocal, maybe do a little EQing and things, we set it into the mix, and then leave it alone. We don't go in and manipulate the tone quality. We don't.
If y'all need a hand with EQing, reverb, compression, you know you can come to your boy. I will always help you. I'm always happy to help with that stuff. And that stuff, those tools are great. They've been staples since the beginning of radio, y'all. Since AM radio, they've been staples, right? But see, like, and to his point, like, practice, get like your craft down, do the takes over and over again until you get the take that you want. Like, that's the performance. And whether you're like a freak and you can one take a whole song and it's good or good enough, like, that's great, man. Good for you. If it takes you 5, 6, 7, 20 takes, maybe it takes you a whole week to get a verse recorded. Great, man. At least you did it. Right? And with these tools, with autotune, pitch correction, stuff like that, you can use that to help you train. Why not? Like, this is what I do. I got my little in-ears. I got my Westone in-ears, and I put them in, and I have my live mic channel, and I've got autotune right below it. And I have autotune locked in, like, not hard enough that it distracts me. Like, I don't like all the, what do they call those? The artifacts and all that stuff. I don't like all those in my ear, but enough that I can hear where the pitch is, like, supposed to be. And if I'm singing flat, then I pick myself up, and now it becomes like a stamina thing. And I've used pitch correction in a lot of, like, my recordings, which I haven't really done that many, but like when I'm practicing, when I'm working on content that I want to put on the channel, in some mixes that I've worked on, to, if there's a bunch of harmonies, I'll bring them a little bit closer together. If there's doubled up tracks, I've used pitch correction to drop one of them so it's not perfectly in tune. I don't know if the singers who send me stuff like tune it before I get it, but I've like dropped it a few cents just to give it a little bit of color, a little bit of interest. So like, those tools are cool. It's just like trying to hide them and be the best at hiding it and getting away from it. Takes me back to my bodybuilding metaphor, right? Like, it shouldn't be about that. It shouldn't be about that. It shouldn't be about how can I trick you better than the next person. Like, that's not what art is. You know what I mean?
Don't manipulate the pitch. We don't manipulate the vibrato. We don't do any of that stuff. You know, that's kind of like photoshopping a photo equivalent in the audio world, basically. And now more than ever,
right?
It's important to define these lines for ourselves of where too far is, because AI is making it possible to do crazy deep fakes, not just in visuals, but also in audio. So that's one of the big reasons why I'm a huge fan of Phil over at Wings of Pegasus. I highly recommend you head over and follow him. I enjoy watching his content. I think he's an honest guy with a lot of integrity, and it's the same thing that I want to do with this channel. I just want to be honest, and I want to celebrate real singing. All right, so there you have it. Definitely this topic's going to come up more on the channel. What are your thoughts on it? Are you able to hear when there's vocal effects processing put on the vocals? You know, like the show Glee. That show is one that in the zeitgeist has been talked about as a show that does have a lot of pitch correcting, so much so that people can hear it. Can you hear it when you listen to Glee? I'm going to start doing some demonstrations.
Some other good examples of that are when singers are, how do I say this, representing something more than just the band. So like at the Olympics, a lot of the Olympics is like pre-taped, they call that, which is like a form of like maybe miming, as Phil would say. I remember watching the Canadian Olympics back whenever those were, when they were in Vancouver, and Nickelback came on, and I was like, oh, it's the CD. It's like, this is a cool tune, man, but it's like, it's the CD basically playing, right? And Nickelback can perform like crazy, man. They're one of the biggest rock bands in the world for a reason. Like, that's not an accident. It's just like, it's more than just the band at that point, right? Like you're kind of representing your nation, representing a label or like a big studio. Like when those things happen, there's a lot of work that goes into those. And to the engineers, you know, props or whatever. Sometimes there's a lot of work that goes into making it sound good without you being able to notice that it's been edited. That takes a lot of work too. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it does take a lot of work, right? And I am curious too, because I like self-admittedly, there are times where I'm like, yeah, this has been either altered or edited or whatever. And I do have like a tolerance for that. That's what he's talking about. Like we got to figure out where we draw the line. Because when it's obvious, like if it's truly obvious to me on this channel, I've said it. I've said it before. I've said it with Angelina Jordan was singing a duet with someone, and the gentleman's voice was very heavily edited. It's just like it is what it is, right? But I don't want to leap into that conversation and ruffle feathers because I don't have an ear for that stuff, right? When he's talking about effects, like even when he just says the word vocal effects, like my first thought is reverb and delay, which isn't really gonna impact like the pitch of a vocal, right? But he's the vocal guy. That's why I did this.
Well, showing pitch correcting, not pitch correcting, so that you all can learn how to hear it in the same way that I can after having manipulated and messed with it for a while. So more to come with this. Thanks for stopping by. If you like this video, click subscribe. And also, like I said, go over and check out Phil over at Wings of Pegasus. He's super awesome. Cheers.
And go check out Tim, man. I'm going to have both their channels in the description box. I would love if we could send a few people over. I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure a lot of y'all follow or have followed Phil from Wings of Pegasus. But if you haven't watched Tim Welch's videos, please go check him out, man. Seems like a solid dude. But if y'all are still with me here, I'm going to tell a little bit of a story. So what this reminded me of mostly was like when I was in live sound, this was before digital anything was widely available. Like everything in the live space was analog. So it was really hard to fake vocals live. Either you had like pre-recorded backing vocals or maybe even pre-recorded lead vocals and you might like mime with them or whatever. But to do like live corrections was really, really, really hard. Then there came out a tool. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. But basically like if you were a piano player, you could route your piano into it, or you could send like an extra feed into this thing, and then your mic would be in the chain too. So your mic, it would go mic into this pedal board and then out to the console, the live console, and it would register whatever key you're playing in based on the notes you're playing with your hands, and it would correct your vocal to that key signature. Now it was really noisy and it was really artifact heavy, but people started playing with it to try to see what they could get away with. And again, it just became that like, to me, it's just like an ego thing. Like, how come when I go and perform, people don't think that I'm like the baddest that there is in town or in the city or whatever? And if I sing perfectly all the time, then nobody can touch me. And then it got exacerbated a little bit, and people started mixing in like 12 harmony voices all at once, and you're the only piano player on stage. And it's like, sure, man, like it's a gimmick at this point, but like it's too much, man. Like, what happened to having backing vocalists? What happened to the bass player and the guitar player singing a little bit? Even the drummer, man, mixing some Don Henley action, and like, what happened to that? You know what I mean? Like, it takes work, it takes effort, but at the end of the day, especially when we're talking big business, man, like it takes too long, or it takes trying to find that person that, like I said, would rather bathe in the river than be on MTV Video Awards or anything like that. And sometimes you can't mold that person into the superstar that you want for your investment, and that sucks, man. That's a terrible, terrible reason to change art like this and try to like pull one over on everyone, especially in the audience, right? But anyways, this is my rant for the day. Please go check out both these videos in the description box. I hope you made it this far. Let me know what you think. Like I said, I do have a tolerance to an extent of a little bit of pitch correction here and there, as long as it's not super artifact heavy, as long as it's not super obvious, or if it is in there, then it's like used as like a saturation thing, like we get in some hip hop music, some R&B music, some modern R&B music where they use like really heavily layered autotune, and it becomes like a saturation thing. I think that that's got its place, but when it comes to just like regular performance, especially in like rock and stuff, y'all, like my tolerance is low, and it depends on the situation, right? But anyways, we can continue this conversation another day. I appreciate you all. Please go check out these videos. Go check out Tim, and I will see y'all on the next one.